guys, and welcome back to the channel. So, just now, instead of doing Autumn of Agony fight, ended up doing fourth challenge, or Carina Challenger's objective, which is effectively Jubilee path up until Sunspot, where you have to use hashtag Carina Challengers Champions. And it actually wasn't too bad. It was relatively cheap. It was a bit finicky and fiddly in places, but overall not too bad at all. Funny remark before we go anywhere else. Very recently I ranked all the 10 7-star champions that Kabam is giving away for free, and that included Guillotine 2099, where I quite actively shared my personal dislike of a champion, even though she, has her uses, but I described her as a perfect example of a champion I will always leave as rank 1 unless I specifically need her for something. And well, that day came, because Guillotine 2099 was absolutely the MVP of this run, and even though again I personally do not like using her much, she was very good for this lane. There's just no question about it. She can do very, very, very well. So this fight consisted of having to do Jubilee, Immortal Abomination, Diablo, Squirrel Girl, Solar Centurion, Spider-Man 2099, and Sunspot. And it actually counters the lane itself quite well too, because this lane had the global node where whenever you crit, it reduces your combat power rate and critical rate further. And if you do crit a lot, you effectively gain no combat power. But since you're using Guillotine 2099 as your main clearer, well, she doesn't crit, so problem solved. Also, Mallman, for instance, isn't really hindered by that. You can just use Mallman without actually using your special attacks. And that was actually kind of helpful in one of the fights as well. And we have Crossbones, who also doesn't crit. So I do think that this was very thought out, kind of like proper challenge. Similar to the first two. So this is definitely much easier, better, and more enjoyable than this one, the one where we had to use dimensional beings. That one is by far the worst, most frustrating and annoying one, and it really, made me hate doing it. This one, it didn't. This one, I kind of could appreciate, the tag that was chosen for the path that was chosen with the fight options that were given to us. It felt like a challenge, but it felt polished. I liked it. And let's break down the fights. So I'm gonna bring up the screen share here, and we are starting with Jubilee. Jubilee was Guillotine 2099 fight. Effectively, the point of Guillotine 2099 fights, for most part, is you don't let opponents use your special attacks. Their special attacks, and then you do not need to deal with any of the Jubilee's nodes either. You start by dropping a few heavy attacks, getting that combo shield up, and then either do 4-hit combos and go straight to block, baiting out a heavy attack, or reparrying, or activate your level 1 and then block, and effectively try to let AI use as little specials as possible, and then this fight becomes a lot easier. Similar to Immortal Abomination. Immortal Abomination, key to success there with Guillotine 2099 is bait out 2 level 2s of Immortal Abomination, so he gets 2 toxic auras, and then kind of either slow down or pace up, depending on how many poisons Immortal Abomination has. Basically, you never want him to get 12 or past that, and you definitely don't want him to throw a level 1 when he's at like 10 plus poisons. So ideally you want to keep Immortal Abomination at like 4, 5, 6 poisons, and just don't let him throw specials at all. Be quite aggressive, and Guillotine 2099 will do fine. Diablo was fairly easy with Void. Key here is obviously stack up your Void's debuffs, and then just push him to level 1 with a light combo finisher, and let him, do the level 1 and fully drink the potion so he starts regening so you can reverse it. I did use 1 revive here. I think you can probably solo. I don't know how to do this fight exactly according to the node, but you kind of don't have to. Bring in like your 6-star Void or high sig Void, and you will be just fine. Again, just let him throw the special once, drink the potion, start healing, and reverse it. And for most part, just do not do the medium combo finishers. At least I didn't anyways. Then Squirrel Girl, it's easily doable fight with Crossbones or Guillotine 2099. I personally found it easier with Guillotine 2099. I believe there's like one revive. Silver Centurion is the same fight plan as the Jubilee. Do not him ever let use his special attacks, and just level 1 power drain. In none of the fights you are using Guillotines pre-fight, just FYI. Spider-Man 2099, fairly doable and quite easy with Crossbones, but also super easy with Mole Man. Mole Man effectively, well, he didn't solo because I brought in Crossbones first. Did about 15% or 18% of his health with Crossbones, then brought in Mole Man and, killed off without dying. So he did phenomenal here. And Sunspot, again, I didn't use any revives, but I started him off with Mole Man, then nearly finished with Guillotine 2099, which can definitely be a solo, and finished off with Warlock. And here, just don't use specials when you have the power stings on you. That's about it. So this was much easier than dealing with this lane, with the reverse controls, with, better tags and so on and so forth. I would go as far as to say that I think the God's Path is probably the easiest one with Serpent, at least execution-wise, if you're using Serpent for sure. Then, arguably, this one, maybe Mutants. I think they're fairly similar, but they're definitely significantly easier than the Dimensional Being Path. It's much harder to do that lane. Right, so which champions did I end up using? And we're going to go and take a look as well at what other options could there be. I will be making like a full-on guide for all of these challenges with spreadsheets and stuff like that a bit later on. But for now, my run. So Jubilee was 2 revives. You can definitely solo this. I was just like out of patience because of all the Autumn of Agony stuff. And I kind of rushed through it. But yeah, I can definitely solo this with Guillotine 2099. I-Bomb, I believe, was 2 or 3 revives as well. I'm not exactly sure. Diablo was definitely 1 revive with Void. Squirrel Girl was 1 revive. I tried out a couple more champions, but yeah, it was 1 revive with Guillotine 2099. And then we had Silver Centurion, I believe 2 revives. In a couple of these fights, though, when I messed up or why I didn't solo was that opponent just seemed to hit through my block like paper. That has been happening more often recently. When I see my champion in blocking animation, opponent dashes in at me and just connects a full combo. I don't know why is it happening recently more, but it is. But yeah, Silver Centurion was 2. You can do better than that. Then Spider-Man 2099, I kind of explained. Mole Man absolutely shredded him. And then I had Sunspot, who I dealt with Mole Man and Guillotine 2099, and like last 15% with Warlock as well. Warlock didn't really have any major purpose. So I'm gonna show you guys my team again. I didn't use Crossbones too much. I just did vast majority of stuff with Guillotine. Void is for Diablo. You can definitely do several of these fights with Crossbones though. Mole Man, as I said, was perfect for Spider-Man 2099. But Warlock synergy with Guillotine kind of helps and kind of hinders in you. I-Bomb fight is more difficult because you will consistently be getting power and you never want to push yourself to a level 2. So you effectively have to throw your level 1 as soon as you get it. But at the same time, it's always much easier to activate your special attacks, which I kind of liked once I got the hang of it. But if you are bringing in Warlock, you need to be aware of that synergy. Whenever Guillotine's immunity triggers, you gain a bunch of power. It has a cooldown, but you're going to get, that effect constantly. And against Squirrel Girl, it was super helpful, because Squirrel Girl does inflict bleeds through block, and Guillotine was immune to that, and I got a lot of extra power, so it kind of felt like it was super helpful for me against Squirrel Girl here. Now, let's check out the Carina challenges. And there are other options that you can bring in, and that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit as well from what I have heard. For instance, so these are all the Carina Challengers champions. OG Guillotine is also an option for Diablo if you do not have Void in any meaningful rarity. You cannot bring in Deathless Guillotine, but you can bring in OG one, and she would have a synergy with Guillotine 2099 as well. She-Hulk was one of the champions I was kind of curious about. I think she could work for a handful of fights also. Maybe I-Bomb, I think she could do quite well. I think potentially Sunspot, but again, I think several of the champions you would bring in could do Sunspot. Still, could she do Diablo? Kind of doubtful. I don't think she would be the greatest for Diablo. Obviously, it's kind of funny to see that these champions used to be like quite popular, but now many of them have been outdated. Hawkeye is an option for Silver Centurion, I think, even though I think it would be quite awful. I have heard Howard the Duck being brought in for a handful of these fights as well, because he definitely can do Sunspot. He should be able to do a couple others. But yeah, for the most part, definitely Guillotine 2099 is kind of the key to this challenge, in my opinion. Remember, you do not want to use champions like Sunspot who crit a lot and rely on special attacks, because you will not be able to use your special attacks much. So that is something to keep at the back of your head as well. But that was the run. Overall, very cheap, very efficient, and now I have a Guillotine 2099 at rank 2 as a 7-star. I highly doubt I'm going to use her in a long time, but hey, taking a champion up to rank 2 for these challenges is far from the worst thing ever. So, yeah, that was my run. Let me know if you found this video useful, and I'm going to catch you guys soon. Bye-bye. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about the